Okay, so another horse. That's always hard to say in the morning for some reason. Horoscope. So, yeah. This one is going to be about Ryan, our rat ranger. Yeah, I did. Okay. Yeah, rat ranger. So, for a little background for those that are listening that aren't part of the game, which should be nobody. Nobody watches my video. Like this. That's not what kind of channel this is. This is basically just a vlog. So, this character, she's a Beastmaster Ranger, and her beast companion is a swarm of rats, led by a small contingent of rats. I think there's 4 of them that are her family that have been transmogrified into rats. Her dad's a dick. Big old magic wizard turned her family into rats because, I don't know, he was like, yeah, that's a good idea because I'm a wizard. There's more to it than that, but... So that's kind of her main motivation. She wants her family back. Ideally in a world that still functions. You know what I mean? Because it's like, oh, you can have your family back, but at the price of the world. Well, then where am I going to live with my family? What are you talking about? So, that's her main motivation right now. She's kind of beholden to the goddess of disease, Talona, which is a very lesser known goddess in D&D as far as I know. But kind of begrudgingly working with her. She's not Ryan isn't a huge fan of the goddess, but it seems like they had a decent talk as of late. You know, they're working a little better. Ryan in general is starting to trust the party a little bit more. She's a very guarded kind of individual. So, without going too much more into her backstory, I think the main fears that hit her are the desolation, the lonely, and the web. And they're pretty straightforward, I think. The desolation, the pain of losing everyone and everything, sudden pain and loss. That's what the desolation is. Mostly loss, having her family taken away from her, but she has hope because her family is still alive. So in some ways, like, that pain is worse. You know what I mean? Because her family aren't totally gone. She can't actually, quote, move on from it. So she's still kind of in the middle of feeling this over and over. Like, the conflict has not been resolved, quote, and she can't move on. If you want to, put it that way. So she's kind of reliving it all the time, seeing her family as rats. And in a lot of ways, that would be worse than her family just being killed. That one's pretty simple. Not a whole lot to really explain. She lost her entire village as well, but she didn't lose her village while she was there. So, next, the lonely. Ties back into pretty much the same concept. She's all alone. A lot of the people that she does find and start to work with, like, quote, friends or colleagues or allies, they leave or betray her or are worthless a lot of the time, especially during her spotlight. The whole round of characters everyone made all left for one reason or another. The 2 UNT betrayed her and left. It was like, hey, we got what we wanted. See ya. And just left her high and dry in the middle of the night. Her brother, Failure, was captured, so no fault of his own. And then the that turtle druid died. So she was left all alone. That does tie back into the desolation a little bit, but it is the lonely as well. Especially those two Yuan-Ti that betrayed her. That's the lonely through and through. Because the difference between the lonely and the desolation, while they're both of them you're usually alone and by yourself and without insert thing here. The lonely, it's less about it being like painfully and suddenly taken away, and more so about those things you love leaving you of their own will, usually. Or, or sometimes through something you did, whether it's, you're an unlovable type of betrayal, or, they just didn't think you were worth anything. There's a lot of ways to, little perspectives to look at it from. But that's the difference between the lonely and the desolation. But I think that one really hits for Ryan, because she was betrayed by two that, she probably didn't, trust them all that much. But it was still okay, these are useful allies. We're in this together right now. They went this far, mostly to aid me. They have their own goals, but they're still here helping me regardless. And then they just disappeared. So, and then the web. Fear of manipulation, that every decision she makes is not hers. I think that ties in a little bit with Talona, being manipulated by a goddess. That's always a thing. But it also seems like that's the type of thing that was happening with her father for the majority of her life. Her father manipulating things and guiding things, making decisions for her, that kind of thing. Because as far as I know from her backstory, for a lot of her life, her father wasn't this big antagonistic figure. He was just oh yeah, it's my dad. He's kind of standoffish, but he's my dad. I love him anyway. Blah blah blah. He's not the best dad, but he's there. Whatever it was, I don't think he was obviously evil right off the bat, but still, there's some manipulation going on there, and I'm not sure how much she can trust what's every single decision she makes. I guess another one, a minor one, I want to hit on is the flesh. A little bit of dysmorphia here, because to my knowledge, she's a half-orc. Her dad is a human. Her mom was an orc, presumably, unless something weird happened. And nobody really discussed it. The player didn't really talk about it yet, because there's been a lot of other things that are more important. But it does seem like there was some little bit of antagonism there. As half-orcs tend to see a lot. In a village of mostly humans, being a half-orc can have some implications. Maybe that's not as much the flesh. I don't know. It's the flesh. Whatever. I'm gonna lump it in with the flesh, some prejudice and stuff. I think that's a good spot for it, because Magnus Archives never really went into racism and prejudice. Though I guess you could file prejudice under the slaughter or the hunt if you wanted to as well, because prejudice and bigotry, they're just finding an excuse to hate some group, or finding a group to place your unwarranted hate upon. So, the wild hatred and violence of the slaughter, or the preification of an individual or a group, could be the hunt. But for now, I'm just going to call it the flesh. Because that's kind of more a more contained fear, I guess. Ryan hasn't talked about experiencing prejudice from the town or anything, so there's not really a whole lot to work with. But I could definitely see some more internalized stuff in regard to that, centered around the fact she's a half-orc. That would make sense to me, that's a possible fear. But again, there's not a lot of confirmation. The character hasn't talked about it. Other than that, not the vast, not the buried, not the spiral or the other. Well, I guess maybe you could fit prejudice, racism under the other as well, under the stranger. I do not know you. You are, quote, the other, like this other group that you don't know about, and that's how a lot of prejudice does get started. It's this other group that's demonized and said, oh, they do that. So it could fit under there too, but again, it was never really touched on. And racism is one of those concepts that sometimes artists don't want to really touch, and that's perfectly fine. You don't have to discuss every topic under the sun, but just kind of realizing that now. Maybe a little bit the watched, beholden, because she kind of knows that Talona is always watching her. But she also, I feel like Ryan doesn't have a lot to hide from a goddess like that. She's just like, go ahead, watch me. I'm going to get undressed now. If I'm not embarrassed, you are. Or something like that. Or maybe the fact she might be concerned that her father's always trying to watch her and keep up on her movements. But that does kind of tie back into the web. What else? I don't know. Maybe I guess the corruption could fit as well, considering her patron deity is a goddess of disease and rot and stuff. So there's probably something there, but again, it hasn't really been discussed. All she knows is that to get her family back, she has to spread Talona's disease to different cities. And all she has to do there is bring her rats with her and let her rats walk around in the city. Pretty simple, but there could definitely be some spark of a fear there around the corruption, but again, it hasn't really been discussed, so I'm just going to leave it as a possible for now. So the only ones that are I think are really codified in this character are the desolation, the lonely, and the web. The fear of loss and pain, being alone, and being manipulated. So, yeah, that's it for Rhine. Last one up is Copper, and then I'm going to revisit Senlir. And then, I don't know. I might not do these again for a little bit until I have another character that I've been around long enough, or something happens in a campaign. I do have to do a Psych 27 campaign diary because we just started back up again. A player dropped out, another player joined, so got some stuff to discuss there. That's all I got for you today.